All right, 7th graders. So what we have here, and if you are studying for your quiz or perhaps you're gone because of baseball or softball or golf, this is your sea star or your starfish. As you can see, I already started some of the dissection, but before I go any further, I want to go over some of the external anatomy. So when we look at a sea star, each one of these arms, the name that is given to these spiny skin creatures is called a ray. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rays there. At the end of each ray is an eye spot. Now these are not an eye like what we think of as an eye, but rather they use them to sense their environment. Then you can see right here you have this circular structure that's called the metaporite. When we talk about the water vascular system,
Dayton LaValley to the high school office, please. Your ride is here. Dayton LaValley to the high school office.
When we talk about the water vascular system, right here, the metaporite, that is what brings in the water. Then you have this central disc, or this center region. It's called the central disc in a starfish. Remember, starfish can reproduce through regeneration. So if I go ahead and if I cut the starfish down the middle like this, or if I go ahead and cut it in 4 like this, each one of these pieces would go ahead and then grow into a new starfish. So that is some of the external anatomy there. Also, you have all these little spines. When the spines are on the back side, this would be called dorsal spines. And then when we go ahead and look at the rays, you have the best way to go ahead and tell the difference between these is the dorsal spines are a little softer, and then you get a structure which is called the dermal brachii. These are found more along the edges down here, and they're a lot stiffer structure. So dermal brachii versus your dorsal spines there. So then when we go ahead and look at the ventral surface of the sea star, we have our mouth right in the middle here. And then as you can see, my probe kind of slips down. There's a depression there. That's called the umbilical groove. And then in the umbilical groove, there's hundreds of little tiny sucker-like devices. These are called the tube feet. So when you watch Finding Nemo and you see the sea star that is attached to the side of the aquarium, it's attached using its tube feet. And those are another important part of the water vascular system that we'll discuss in a little bit. So now going back over and looking at my dissected rays, the first structure that you can go ahead and see right here, this brown stuff, this is called the digestive gland. So if I go ahead and lift the digestive gland out of the way, I'm just going to remove it there. See, I'll remove it on this side too. You notice a difference in texture and color. Underneath that, this right here, these are the gonads. So these are the reproductive structures of the sea stars. So you can see a difference right here. I've got some digestive gland left. Then when you go ahead and lift that off, you've got this other structure right here. That would be the gonads. So we've got 2 other structures there. In order to go ahead and more easily be able to see everything else, I'm just going to go ahead and remove those. Just tease them away with my tweezer, or if we're going to use scientific language, I would call that my forceps. So now what I need to go ahead and do is I want to make sure that I leave the metaporite intact here. I don't want to cut anything up here. So I'm going to go ahead, I've got my cut here, and I'm going to cut right up here. So I make just a little flap that I can go ahead and lift off. Now, if you're on the internet and you're watching this video, this is for a 7th grade life science class. So before you go ahead and skewer me about saying that's not the dermal brachii or there's multiple different stomachs, this is 7th grade life science, so we're not getting too technical. So now what I needed to make sure I do is I got to make sure I cut so I can lift up on these flaps. Okay, so I've got a little flap here. I want to be able to lift it. I'm still getting stuck, so that means I've got to make a few more cuts along the sides. But I want to make sure I don't cut too deep by that metaporite because I don't want to go ahead and lose my stone canal. So now when I go ahead and lift up, I get all this tissue. This stuff right here, this is part of the stomach. Now I don't remember what the term is specifically, but a starfish, when it goes ahead and eats a bivalve, it actually kind of spits its stomach into the bivalve after it's pried it open. So with that in mind, the starfish has a real unique adaptation to eat that way. So That would be kind of like when you go down to lunch, if when you get your tray, you would just kind of regurgitate your stomach out onto the tray, and then the digestive gland, which we already pulled out, which was found here, excretes a bunch of enzymes which go ahead and allow the starfish to basically dissolve the clam, suck it back up into his stomach, then pull it into his mouth. So the way I'm going to find my stone canal is I've got my Matapor right here. If I go ahead and lift up, I'm looking for a little tube, and I can start to see, I believe, just a little bit of it in here. We're looking for a tube that connects our metaporite down here to our ring canal. So I've got to be careful when I take some of this out, because I don't want to end up tearing it, but I want to make sure that I do have the right structure. Okay, so as we go ahead and look in, I've got to cut a little bit more on the side just to ensure that we get enough access, and then hopefully we can find it if I have not already destroyed it. Okay, so you can see we've got a structure right here that I can go ahead and almost get my probe underneath. I don't want to put it underneath there because I don't want to break it, but that is going to be our stone canal. So we've got just that little tube, and it might even be hard for you to see on the screen. It's kind of right down in here. So what that is doing, that's bringing our water from our metaporite right here. Then it's going to go ahead and bring it down to this nice circular canal right here, which is called a ring canal. So we go metaporite, stone canal, and you can see right there, here's our stone canal real well. And it did kind of get torn off a little bit there. So that's our stone canal. That brings water into our ring canal. And then you have this ridge. This ridge is called your radial canal. So the water goes through the metaporite, through the stone canal, through the ring canal, out through this ridge in the radial canal. Think radial canal, radius of a circle. You've got them running out. And then the last part that we're going to discuss, you've got all these little tiny sacs, and they're really hard to see on the screen. Most of these are all deflated. These are called your ampullae. So each one of those, I'll bring it a little bit closer, see if we can see it in a little bit more detail if it gets focused. Each one of these little tiny sacs here is called an ampullae. That goes ahead, it's kind of like a turkey baster, the bulb on it. So as those go ahead and fill with water, and then as they eject water, those control the tube feet. So hopefully this helped you as far as knowing the identification parts of the starfish for any dissection quizzes that we might have upcoming.